agentic connections. So we have a Slack integration. It's internal, not yet launched. It's working great. It has access to our code, our logs on GCP. When we're debugging something, it helpfully chimes in. We had this incredible moment, I guess maybe 2 weeks ago, where just out of nowhere, like it was not even prompted in any way. It just preemptively or proactively said, "Hey guys, I just noticed that Gemini 3.0 dropped. Can you upgrade parts of me to use different parts of that?" So, at the moment, it has view access to our code. You could imagine a future where it has edit access and it can sort of perform brain surgery on itself. And this type of Slack integration as something that could be really, really useful for different organizations.
Hi, my name is Demetri Panici, and I'm a content creator, agency owner, and AI enthusiast. You're listening to the AI Agents Podcast, brought to you by Jotform, and featuring our very own CEO and founder, Ida Tank. This is the show where artificial intelligence meets innovation, productivity, and the tools shaping the future of work. Enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the AI Agents Podcast. In this episode, we have David Petrou, the founder and CEO of Continua. How are you doing today, David?
I'm doing great, Dimitri. How are you?
I'm living the dream. Tell me at first just a little bit about your background and how you kind of got into AI itself.
Oh boy, probably as a kid, reading a lot of books on science, computers, devoured manuals, and so forth. Taught myself programming, typing programs from the backs of computer magazines like Family Computing and Compute. Reading Gettel Bach by Douglas Hofstadter. That was something that really opened my mind on all the strange loops and all the interesting phenomena that comes out of emergent technologies, artificial life, things of that nature. I went to school for computers, both at Berkeley and Carnegie Mellon.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, I got my PhD at CMU. Then right after that, went to Google. I was at Google for, I guess, almost 18 years. And yeah, that was pretty eye opening. I felt like I had a front row seat to the future of technology. Got to work on a lot of interesting projects. I was in machine intelligence, AI, ML, that type of thing for my last 10 years or so at Google. So yeah, it was really interesting time. Still is really interesting. That's why I started Continua. That's why I left Google to start Continua, which is that the rate of change of technology right now is faster than I've ever seen it in my whole career. And just being a part of a dynamic environment at a startup seemed exactly the right thing to do in 2023 when I started Continua.
Awesome. That's amazing. Well, I really think that, after taking a look at your background and stuff, I got some questions hopefully will be tailored to you and interesting. I kind of want to start with your, you know, first, I guess, foray into how you got into this concept for Continua, right? I know that it's
Mm.
the tagline's AI that joins the conversation.
Yeah.
You kind of are trying to make it a more personal and close, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Um, Experience to what people would usually interact with, right? I see on the homepage just text conversation as the primary thing, and a lot of people are in their text all the time. So it seems like a natural place to place AI. Tell us a little bit about how it works and how even before that, how did the idea come to you?
Yeah. So a few things. I think it's also useful to talk about what it isn't, right? So
Mm.
one of the ways in which we think about what we do at this company and sort of goes through our ethos and our values and our mission is about not creating a companion, not creating a friend. A lot of companies are doing that. We do not look at AI as a replacement for human to human connection.
Sure.
And what we do at Continua is create an agent that tries to elevate human to human connection. So if you think about times where you might have a friend, but you're just really busy in life, you don't think to text them to, go out, get some beers or whatever. Continue as something that lives in your group chat and it can give you those nudges, you and your friends nudges to actually get out and do something together, go out and touch grass, so to speak. So I think that's, an important positioning and important distinction. And it comes up throughout how we develop our product and think about how to create an AI that really helps the fullness of human to human connection. Now, about the idea itself, we should even talk about what does it mean to come up with ideas to work on in products. And I saw a lot of this at Google, I see a lot of this at Continua. You want to be in a position where you're coming out with something that's not too early and not too late. And the calculus is very different at big tech versus a startup that has really limited resources, right? So to us, it seemed quite clear that there was something missing. If we think about the revolution in how we experience large language models through chat based interfaces, it's been amazing. It's changed the world, but it's always been in the context of what one might call single player mode. The human says something, the AI responds. It's a sort of call and response. Um, it's great, but it leaves a huge amount of opportunity on the table. People are social creatures. We like to get together. We're motivated by each other. We're inspired by
Yeah,
what people do. Um, and so we asked ourselves, what would it mean to bring an AI into the context of these areas where people are already congregating? And when we started this project, it seemed to me, boy, we had to be too late. Why hasn't someone else done this?
sure.
And yeah,
Yeah,
because
right.
it's
A
not,
lot of people are making a lot of cool stuff now, so it's like, how's no one come up with it? Is I feel like a
yeah.
common
Well,
thing for any good new idea.
so there's a lot of theories on, do you want to be first? Do you want to sort of establish the environment or the ecosystem or the platform or whatever? Or do you want to be a fast follower that learns from the mistakes of the person who's first? In any case, this specific idea, it's not an easy one. It's non-trivial. There's a lot of problems that you have to solve to get it right. We think we have the world's best social AI. That's how we're defining this space. There's a long road to go, and it's a very exciting place to work. So I think in terms of our timing, we were neither too late nor too early. We were just at the right time.
I want to take a step back as well when it comes to AI in general for you, because obviously you would describe yourself as agentic. Is that fair? I feel like a lot of people are using the term. Would you or would you not? It says text agent on the website, right? You describe yourself as agentic to an extent.
Well, we describe our product as
That's what I mean, not you. Yeah, the product. Why did I say that? Yeah, I
I
kind of
think
interchange those terms.
I think I as a human, I have agency.
Yeah, no, you do
Yeah,
have
I like
agency.
to
Wow,
think
I
so.
wasn't asking an ontological question. I
Sure.
was asking more about the product itself. So you would describe it as agentic. What would you say you've noticed, just to kind of go back on your journey with AI, right? ChatGPT 3.5 comes out in what, 2023 fall, 2022 fall, I think.
Yeah, something
I'm
like that.
forgetting.
I was playing around with GPT-2, I think in 2019. I might be getting the dates slightly wrong, but or maybe it was a few years after that. Anyway, yeah, I mean, there was something really magical that happened, and I don't know. I feel like ML is the humility that we as programmers or as software engineers are not able to craft programs ourselves to solve problems. If you think about, what would it take to write a program that could distinguish between a cat and a dog? No one could do it. Instead, what ML or what this branch of ML happened to be was us having the humility that instead we had to create a program that could create a program. And by creating a program, it's finding good values of parameters in a neural network to actually solve a problem like that.
Sure.
And in some ways, it might be the case that most problems out there are of the sort that you can't solve by brute forcing it. Almost like how um, there are more transcendental numbers than non-transcendental numbers. That kind of thing. It's kind of like a
Sure.
non-obvious statement. I feel like we're also in a mode where collaborating with these AIs is the humility of it sort of puts a it points toward the fact that even in designing systems or developing the architecture or the architectonics of it, the complexities that are out there are so big that
Mhm.
we need to partner with this new intelligence. It's a foreign intelligence, but it's an intelligence nonetheless. So we can go deep and we can go on the timeline if you like. We can talk about what does it mean to be a researcher? What does it mean to be a software engineer? What we're trying to do at Continua is bring the best aspects of this technology out in ways that can help people in their lives. But I have to agree with what I think you're getting at, Dimitri, which is that this is an incredible time to be alive and see these technologies start to develop and be part of the development of these technologies.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And the reason I kind of ask, it's as an angle I'm going at in a lot of recent interviews. You said you're playing around with two with ChatGPT. When did you start to notice from the level of your expertise in AI that the models really started to gain the ability to become agentic, right? Obviously 3.5 was just great for little outputs here and there. Was it kind of when O3 started to have reasoning and then like 4.1 was like a mini fast reasoning? Where did you really start to see that capability come to
Yeah.
fruition?
Well, I think it also depends on what we mean by agentic. If we want to be, yeah, I'm interested in hearing your definition or how you want to guide the conversation. But for me, it's like, okay, can a model use a tool? Um, can a model create a tool that it uses? Can a model understand APIs that are out there? Can a model search for APIs out there? There's a lot of different levels to this.
Sure.
I think maybe there wasn't one light bulb moment, but there were a few light bulb moments. I remember being at Google around the time that we started to see zero shot learning work. And I remember looking through some code that a colleague wrote, and there were instructions in a prompt, that sort of guided the output of the inference stage to do something in a certain way. And it was like, can this be real? It seems um, totally insane and totally beautiful, and just so many lights went off when I saw that moment.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's a really good insight. I always kind of like to hear where people originally, are having this light bulb moment go off in their head about not only their own thing, but AI itself, right? And like where AI itself becomes at that level. Because a lot of people, I think, had some really cool early expectations that weren't obviously able to be met after everyone did some tinkering.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well, I think maybe several projects in my career at Google were of this sort. What's the expression? The eye is bigger than the stomach, so to speak. We're like, well, there are things that we wanted to do that just weren't possible at the time. I was on the founding team of Glass, the wearable computer with the trackpad on the side, and
yeah,
there were so many ideas that we had around, things like, well, what about a use case of asking Glass where you left your keys if you misplaced your keys? Well, okay, how do you do something like that? Well, first of all, um, it has to be on all the time so that it could see where the keys last were. Well, you can't do that in a product with really limited battery that's overheating all the time if you have the camera on all the time. But there's worse problems. Okay, now you have to do computer vision. Now, something like keys at the time in, I guess that was like 2012, 2013, um, maybe possible to identify the class keys, maybe not. Back then, computer vision was, well, okay, let me correct a bit. That's like sort of when AlexNet, ImageNet stuff was starting to kick off, but we were using technologies that were a lot better with planar two-dimensional objects, doing feature recognition, and histogram of gradients type stuff. And so it was really good with things like CD album covers or book covers, not so good with contour defined objects. Okay,
Hmm.
but let's assume that you could, recognize something like keys. Now you have a problem where you have to state your intent. The fact that you're missing your keys and you want to find it. It sounds like a simple search problem, but people can say things in a million different ways. How do you make that fast, efficient? Well, there were techniques that could work, okay, but not so great. This was pre LLM, pre the understanding of natural language the way we have it today. So so many challenges compounded on. I can go even deeper on all of these challenges, but the reality is that we are in a much better place today given um, the progress that has been made across all these different domains. And especially, I'm excited by the multimodality that we've been seeing um, across images, video, sound, text. Really, it's all one thing. And the more that you can train on multimodal inputs, the more network is going to have internal representations that are able to support each other and help it do a much wider variety of tasks.
Mm. Yeah, it's that's fair, and I think multimodality is actually getting improved more and more in a lot of cases. I know that there's, for example, I run a media agency, right? And we have a thing that just occurred with us, which I had a training course for we make tutorials for SaaS and AI companies essentially, and like that type of style. So it's a very specific style of edit, right? So I had to make like a training course for any new editor I've had on there. And Gemini 2, I made like this whole bunch of like mini Gemini agents because at the time Gemini I think was the leader and is still the leader in sort of like vision recognition of like on-screen assets and stuff like that. When it comes to Gemini 3, I think the marker I saw was that it went from like 11% to 70% on like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, and actually, shout out to Abanshu and team who worked on I know the team really
Oh, you
well
do? Okay.
with that stuff. The screen understanding work is incredible.
Incredible.
It's something
Yeah.
that has been on my mind for a very, very long time. I feel like the what comes off of screens and being able to understand it has been so key, and we're seeing so many beautiful computer tool use cases right now that's built on that technology. And I agree with you, Gemini 3 is the definite leader in in this space.
Yeah. And I'd love to talk a little bit more about your Google experience in a sec, but just to kind of finalize that thought, what happened was when I'm trying to wrap up that original thought that I had about how things weren't really able to be agentic, let's say, from a reasoning standpoint 2 years ago, but then now we're getting there. And it is possible. With Gemini 3, going from 2.5, I actually had a 2 hour long course with like modules of how to properly create a tutorial edit, right? I've made like 2,000 of these. So like I really just laid it out. And anytime I get a new video editor, for the most part, they do pretty well and they're onboarded within like a week because they just have to watch the course, follow what it is, use our little template, and then they're good to go. I was like, there's another side to it, which is like quality assurance of video editing. I was actually able to just make a bunch of mini, very detailed prompts with like a system prompt and then like a, uh, you know, asset level prompt. And whenever somebody uploads a video for review now, I have like a Gemini agent, 13 steps, go through each of it. But in 2.5, it was not working. And a lot of people don't realize the tech might just be behind your idea. Like the models just might be behind your idea. You know what I'm saying? The
Yeah.
models might be behind versus where your idea is at. Was it? I think I said that
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, but
right.
I get your point, and there might be more you want to add here, but if I could just
No, you
interject,
go. You go. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's how do I put this? It's almost like the concept of bootstrapping, or picking yourself up from your own bootstraps. Being able to either develop these modules, or in the case of a startup, um, develop the code itself, being able to make it as closed loop as possible. These are things that we obviously do at Continua and a lot of companies do. Being able to have AI evaluate the quality of your user interface of your product, right?
Mm,
And you have to be really careful, like you were saying, that the AI is capable of doing that. If you try a model that's, not quite up to snuff, then you might be set down the wrong course, or the model might not be helping you. It might be wasting time and money. It would be better for you to evaluate it yourself as a human. But once we get to a certain level, and I feel like we're almost there, then you could do a tremendous amount of loop closing so that the development of your UI and your evaluation of your UI could happen overnight while you're sleeping, right? And you wake up the next day and you have something beautiful that's been created and evaluated by the best AIs that are out there.
yeah, no, absolutely. It's an interesting spot to be in, right? With these things right now because the capabilities, like I said, could be slightly behind it. So, kind of furthering my question, where have you kind of seen some of your ideas and what you guys are doing come to fruition more and more because the tech has been able to kind of enhance what that initial idea was, whether maybe the pricing started to make sense. A lot of tools, whether it be Claude, recently releases 4.5 Opus, it's the
Yeah.
best coding model, and they're priced what like third went in a third or like halves or whatever, right? From an API standpoint. So things like this
Yeah.
happen often. Like what were there anything, has there been anything like that in the last little while that has kind of allowed you to confidently add a new feature or something to that effect? I'd love to get into more cool features that you guys
I
have as
mean,
well.
in some ways, the whole decision for me to start Continua when I did was a bet or a prediction on the trends, right?
Okay, sure.
Um, and that goes in, I guess there's 2 axes there, or maybe 3. One is, the quality of the models, right? So back in April 2023, when I started Continua, hallucinations, that was the big issue.
Yeah.
So, you had one camp saying, "Well, this is inherent; it's never going to go away," and that
Yeah.
sort of puts the ceiling on the utility of these models. Another camp was, "Well, look, there's been a lot of progress really fast. A lot of really, really, really smart people are working on this problem. Um, it will go down," and I think it has gone down. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, and the whole thing about hallucination is it's like, I mean, all models do is just predict the next token. So to the extent it gets it right or gets it wrong, it's doing the same thing. So hallucination is probably the wrong mental model for how these things work. Uh,
Wait, explain what you mean a little bit more by that, just so everyone can kind of get more context, and then feel free to continue.
yeah, yeah, it's not that like, yeah, how do I put this? And by the way, Continua is sort of a play on the whole notion of what an LLM does. It just continues what you give it. Um,
Mm.
the Whether or not a right answer or wrong answer comes out, it's not like we should be amazed just that it gets the syntax of language correct, that it gets the physics of how these things work. And then if it says something wrong or says something right, we just have to think about, well, what went into the training data? How does this thing work? How does it sample, the distributions coming out to actually continue the temperature settings, all of that. When you understand how these things work, it sort of demystifies. It's like, well, okay, of course it's going to say some right things, some wrong things. Now let's build up um, systems and protections and guardrails that get it to do more right than wrong. It's not like the thing has some like extra capacity to hallucinate in a sort of anthropomorphized way. So I guess what I'm saying is hallucination is a good um, sort of like um, shorthand, linguistic shorthand for some behavior that we don't want, but it has no analogy to what a human might be doing.
Okay, now that makes more sense. Thank you for that
The
context.
the second axis would be cost, as you mentioned, and yeah, and that was also a bet that I made at the time. Now, the thing about Claude 4.5 Opus thinking, I I don't know if it's yeah. So at least what I read recently, and I could be wrong, is that it's not that it's necessarily cheaper on a per token basis, but that it uses fewer thinking tokens than the previous model. So it winds up being cheaper in the end. But I'll have to check the actual token costs. I think that It's quite clear that the big tech companies are, you know, um, doing this. Uh, the price is being lowered because, first of all, they become much, much more efficient in how they're doing things, and that's the whole thing about what can big tech do at scale that smaller companies cannot do by any stretch of the imagination. And this has been wonderful for the startup ecosystem. Secondly, the um, development and further research and further deployment of on-device technologies is really, really key. This is something that I worked on a bunch at Google. What would it mean for um, a lot of this computation to be pushed at the edge, right? There are a lot of these devices out in the world. They all have some sort of acceleration of what is required to do machine learning type inference on them. Um, and there are latency benefits from doing so. There are um, obvious cost benefits to a company because you're essentially saying, okay, well, the energy that's going to be paid for by the consumer when they plug their phone in the wall and charge their phone at night. There's also really interesting um, aspects around where the data is going and what is doing the processing on the data. So at the moment, of course, the the technology isn't quite there um, for getting the highest quality results, right? You're always going to get a higher quality result using a server to do inference, but
Mm,
over time, there's an increasing amount of computation that can be done at the edge, and I think that is another real bullish reason for why I started Continue at the time I did, because it's becoming easier and easier to do that kind of offloading. And then the third axis is latency. These models are getting faster. I mean, you have to be really careful on how you use context. It's not a panacea to have an incredibly large context window because you're going to suffer in terms of latency at a certain point. Um,
mhm.
and also, you can suffer on quality because you're requiring the model to do more work to separate the wheat from the chaff. But
It's
yeah,
interesting.
I think just touching on your question about the technology trends, that these are the different aspects that I'm seeing, and nothing is holding still, or nothing is in stasis right now. Things are moving really, really fast.
Yeah, no, I think that's interesting. I kind of want to talk a little bit more then about, you seem to, this is actually one of the better explanations I've heard of the different axes that some of these models work at. Because usually I'll ask questions about that in general, but you really have gotten really in depth with it. So I appreciate it. It seems like those 17 years at Google did some, you really have maybe a bit of more technical backgrounds than some of the founders I've interviewed. Really cool. Kind of want to dive more into the product itself that you guys have. So obviously with this type of knowledge, that you have. I would love just like kind of a brief breakdown of what makes you guys tick. Who are the people you would like to use your app, and like what are some very common use cases that you
Right,
find?
right, yeah, yeah. So it's really a beautiful product. I feel the great feedback that we get from our users. Um, our retention is really high. People who use the product tend to stay on it. The way to think about it is the following: the top apps that are out there on anybody's phone are going to be chat related applications, messaging applications, whether it's iMessage on iOS, Google Messages on Android, WhatsApp, Instagram, Telegram, these sorts of things.
Holograms.
All the grams. Continua appears just like any other participant in a chat. You invite it. It's not in all of your group chats. It's only in the group chats that you want it to be in. So Dimitri, you and I could have a DM. We could also have a group chat with Continua participating in it. Okay. Now, what does it mean for Continua to participate in a group chat? So what we've created is a quiet helper. It answers when it thinks it could be useful, and it stays quiet most of the time, but it listens really carefully. These are things that were really hard to build. I'll get into, the use cases and so forth in one second. what I want to sort of underscore here is that because this is a somewhat technical podcast, all
Yeah.
existing LLMs are instruction tuned for this kind of call and response.
Mm,
You first you do the pre-training, you got your base model, but then to make it useful, you have to instruction tune it. So they're all designed for single user, single agent, call and response. That's exactly what you do not want in the context of a group chat.
okay.
You'd have, Microsoft Clippy at that point. You don't want the agent responding every single time. You want it to have a sense of the conversation flow. You want it to have a sense of social etiquette or social discretion.
Sure.
Um, think about if you had a new employee working for you and you were in a context of a team meeting, what would the characteristics that you would want of this new employee? You'd want them to um, ask questions if they didn't understand what was going on. You would want them to offer helpful insights if they had insights to offer. You'd want them to be quiet if they didn't have anything. You wouldn't want them barging in at every moment. And last but not least, you'd want them to listen really, really carefully because what they hear in today's meeting could help them do their job better tomorrow. Now, to actually implement that, we had to sort of break the LLM's brain. We we're not a thin wrapper over any one LLM. We have a bunch of fine tunes that really understand the intent. We have designed Continua so that if it feels that it could really be of help, it will say something even when not directly addressed. So these are the sorts of conversational dynamics that we have as people and we try to put into Continua. And we firmly believe that the path to AGI has to go through solving social AI. In other words, if you don't solve social AI, it would almost be like a human savant that knew a lot of facts and could make a lot of inferences, but um, did not show up well, could not cooperate, could not collaborate with other people or other agents.
Mm, okay. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I don't quite think I. Once again, you actually doing a really good job of explaining this in more detail than I usually get. So I appreciate that context. Um, what would you say is kind of the current level of like user base you're working with? I know that you, if I'm not wrong, you ended up getting a uh you get an $8 million raise to bring AI agents to group chat. So congrats on that. What kind of was that process like, and what's the early kind of feedback that you're seeing from people?
We
Um,
raised actually right after I left Google, so back in
okay.
2020,
Oh,
we
the
went
TechCrunch
through.
article is late.
Yeah. So the article, I'm not sure which one you're referring to, but we discussed the actual product, but the raise happened before. Some companies
Got
announce
it.
their raise before they have a product. We decided,
You wanted to have a product before.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly. So think of all the cases where okay, let's go through a few different cases. Say you have some roommates and you just want help keeping track of, well, who's doing the chores at a different, on a different day, who's taking out the trash, who's doing this, who's doing that. Or say a family where the parents are coordinating on who's picking up the kids, when is a certain after school event happening, when's the gardener coming over. So these different things, it's almost like having a household PM when you have Continua in your group chat. Then there's cases where friends really interested in some sport, basketball or whatever, and they just want like updates on what's happening in that sport, what players are going to what teams, updates on game stats, that sort of thing. People interested in stocks and wanting updates on that kind of thing. Um, all sorts of tricky situations that come up where you want um another form of input or advice so an AI can help. And so we find in group chat, AI can be a really good facilitator to helping people come to decisions, helping people work through different problems. Um, and yeah, so if we think about some of the more specific use cases or facilities that Continua provides, there's this reminder functionality. So Continua can, at certain times when you ask it, tell the group chat when something has occurred. So I have a group chat with people that, discuss AI, and so Continuous in that group chat, and if it finds information, relevant information that we care about for a specific subdomain, it will alert us. But not only that, it can create Google Documents. So in one of my chats once a week, it keeps a Google document up to date with everything that's happened in a certain domain. So think of it like um, all the cases that you might use a sort of single player mode LLM. And right now, you have to copy paste everything back and forth. It's like, hey, everybody, this is what Claude said. And you send it over there. Instead, Continua comes to you and your group where you're already communicating and provides value in that space much more directly.
Mm, okay, that makes sense. And what do you think kind of is, I guess, the thing that most like what are most users kind of buzzing about in your product, or what are you most buzzing about in your product that has been released kind of recently, or it doesn't have to be recently, it can just be
Yeah,
in
I mean,
general.
we recently had, a nice shopping release, and that's been great. So, um, because Continua is in these groups chats and it listens carefully, it gets to know people's interests, preferences, things that they might want. And so, we did a shopping integration with Amazon and a few other, companies. So if an event like Black Friday, just came up recently, if you want to get a gift for someone, you can discuss with Continua, okay, well, I want to get a gift for a certain person. What would be the right thing? Because Continua has this history of what's happened in these group chats, it can do an amazing job of providing really personalized suggestions. And we've seen this both in the group chat and in the DM scenario. The DM side, it's worth explaining how this works because I think this is one of the most interesting aspects of Continua. So the memory model of Continua is such that information only flows down from superset groups to subsets. So if I am in a group chat with you, Dimitri, and with Continua, and we're discussing I don't know, AI or books about AI or something like that, then I can later DM Continua and say, "Hey, I want to get a gift for Dimitri. What should it be?" And Continua would say, "Well, Dimitri is really into agents and AI. Here's a book that was just published, and here's a link to Amazon where you can buy it." And the reason why that works is because Continua was in the chat with you and me, and so,
Oh, okay.
naturally, when I'm in the DM with Continua, it would have that knowledge just like a human participant would.
Oh, okay, interesting. So hmm, I'm trying to, could you give me maybe an example, another example use case of like how some people have interacted with it, or how you would use it personally, because obviously you do own product. I
Yeah,
hope so.
yeah, obviously we do, yeah. Yeah, a few different ones. So, trip planning, this is a
Planning.
really big one. This is
Yeah.
probably where the light bulb moment happened for this social AI product. This was early this year. It was just getting to the point where we could test it. And I went on a trip to Disneyland. I took my daughter to Disneyland. It was her first time at Disneyland. And so, and also my sister was joining us. Um, and so my sister and I had a group chat with Continua, and we used Continua to completely plan this trip. So we would give Continua some like rough, okay, like these are the dates that would work and so forth. Continua figured out with our feedback and our input what restaurants to go to after we were done with Disneyland. While we were at Disneyland, what rides to go to, in what order. It was
Sure.
a ginormous chat that was incredibly fruitful and helped us plan and get to a trip that was much richer than we could have done on ourselves with the time that we had. What was even more interesting was when we were actually at Disneyland. our experience was also enriched by Continua because there was all sorts of things that happened on the ground, like one ride was closed and, different exigencies that Continua helped us work around and like replotted our itinerary on the fly. And then there were cases where I was at this part of the park, my sister was at the other, but because Continua meets us where we are in standard group chat, iMessage on her phone, Google Messages on my phone, it was there and available to us to help us get through the logistics of this trip. And at the very end, um, Continua listed in a Google Doc all the rides that we went on and next year what we should do because we missed some things on this year. So this was like a really magical moment that made me realize, oh, we're definitely on to something. But yeah, we use it all the time. We use it at the company. We go to lunch every Thursday, and Continua helps us figure out, okay, what's the next restaurant that we're going to go to? What did we go to before? What's everybody's meal preferences? So you just think of it like a really, really personalized helper in the context of all these things that we do as people.
That's pretty cool. I I'm wondering then, with obviously this type of thing, you seem like you're just trying to make day-to-day interactions and social planning kind of easier. At least that's something that I'm noticing, whether it be in a long, big thing or it's just a small thing. What is kind of the ultimate vision and goal for what Continua is? Like, how would you, if a large scale amount of people would to be using
Right.
this, what would be the outcome that would be like
Yeah.
your
So
happy
we
place?
are we are building more and more agentic connections. We have a Slack integration. It's
Sure.
internal, not yet launched. It's working great. It has access to our code, our logs on GCP. When we're debugging something, it helpfully chimes in. We had this incredible moment, I guess maybe 2 weeks ago, where um, just out of nowhere, like, it was not even prompted in any way. It just preemptively or proactively said, "Hey, guys, I just noticed that Gemini 3.0 dropped. Can you upgrade parts of me to use different parts of that?" So, at the moment, it has view access to our code. You could imagine a future where it has edit access and it can sort of perform brain surgery on itself. But in any case, we view this type of Slack integration as something that could be really, really useful for different organizations. But looking more broadly, we're really interested in how AI can participate in group settings. And as you've noted, right now we're focused on text messaging, but there's something much broader that we can do. Take, for example, this video chat that we're having right now. There's been a lot of great AI out there to summarize meetings and provide like a really nice timeline of what happened. But what would it mean for an AI to be a quiet listener? And then when we get stuck on something, for example, earlier in this conversation, I was a little bit unsure about what's the cost per token for Claude 4.5
Sure, yeah.
Opus thinking. Well, Continua could just raise its hand and say like, Excuse me, I think it's such and such, and here's the reference for it." So that type of more immediate real-time interaction is something that we're going after.
That'd be pretty cool. I would like that very much. I think that would be a incredible kind of I don't know. I think it would be an incredible showcase of the ability for AI to not only reason and understand when we are directly asking it something, but contextually kind of chime in when there is a potential issue. So that's really cool. What are some of the features right now that I would say that you are working on maybe in the background? You can talk about. If not, that's okay. Or what you're looking forward to in general in the next year to try to bring to people.
More personalized experiences, that's really the key thing. Um, Really leveraging what the existing facilities of chat-based platforms, but then extending beyond to provide really bespoke, interesting experiences that are really personalized to the people in the conversation. That's where I see things going. The way I like to think about it is that users don't care about apps per se. they care more about the capabilities that apps provide. So the extent to which through this agentic technology, Continua can mix and match or remix the capabilities of existing applications. Um, that's really the goal that we're after.
Interesting. Okay, well that's awesome. Just have a couple more little questions before we kind of close the episode out that are a little bit more about the world of AI in general. So, given your history with on-device AI at Google, there's kind of a big debate right now about massive models in the cloud versus smaller private models running locally. My question would then be for businesses concerned about data sovereignty, sovereignty, yeah, data
Sovereignty. Yeah,
sovereignty.
yeah, yeah.
And speed. Which side of history do you think kind of wins out? Will our like social AI eventually live entirely around our laptops? What are your kind of thoughts there?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, and we have to separate out a few things here. So, there's a whole field or concept around secure computation, um, and how that could be provided in a resource effective way. So, think about secure enclaves in the cloud or trusted execution environments on device. In fact, I think all the major cloud providers have something of this sort. GCP recently announced a secure computing um, platform that works with Gemini. So think about data that's encrypted not only at rest and in transit, but also during computation via encrypted memory. So you can get a really, really high standard of protection and privacy by using such products. There's probably some premium for using them. I'm not quite sure. Um,
Sure.
so if that's the goal, it sidesteps the on-device versus server-side question. On-device has a lot of really nice advantages. It works in disconnected mode. Now, obviously, there's only so much you can do in disconnected mode. Continua is a social product, so if you're disconnected and can't, talk to other people, then that's probably not the most important thing. Latency when you are in a sort of um, cell dead zone, it's nice to have more reliable latency as well when you can do computation at the edge. Um, and yeah, there's a lot of information that's in a device like a phone that the more pruning of the data that you could do at the edge, the better. And so you could imagine all sorts of ways of anonymizing information at the edge. There's a whole literature around something called federated learning, which is something that I saw up front at Google around doing decentralized training of models, where you can think of it like almost like a map reduction, where in this case the map stage would be the gradient descent that's happening at the edges, and then the reducer stage would be a sort of aggregation of the gradients in the cloud with noise added at the client. So think about like differential privacy. So there's some plausible deniability of any specific data point at the clients. These are things that need to continue. There's really important reasons for this sort of privacy work to fully develop. I would say that the benefits of on device are just pretty huge. Also, harken back to what I said earlier about the cost savings because of you're sort of like distributing the inference cost across people. But it's not yet at the point where it can replace what's happening, where you need a really, really large model in the cloud. And thankfully, via technologies like secure computation, you don't have to make such a strong privacy compromise anymore.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I'm kind of just want to close things out with one final question, because we are kind of coming up to the end of the hour here. What would you say outside of what you are doing at a personal, basis? You have your product, which is awesome. What would you say is your best and favorite product that you use that's AI,
Oh.
um, outside of the product you were creating?
I would say Warp, the Warp terminal.
Okay.
Um, Zach Lloyd is the CEO. He was at Google before. If you haven't played with Warp, do it. Uh, to me, it's the best AI assisted coding environment.
Okay.
Um, I'll just say in one word, one concept about it, but I can wax poetic on this tool for a very long time. Think about how browsers, a long time ago, you could only enter a URL into the URL bar. And then,
Yeah,
I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, you could enter search terms. So in Chrome, you could search from the URL bar. In the work terminal, you could type ls, you could type cat, whatever. You can also type, hey, I want to work on a new feature and it needs to be structured in such and such way. Please go at it. So in this one place, you could do both natural language and terminal commands, and it just melds everything together in a really seamless fashion.
interesting. I haven't had that answer yet, but I appreciate that insight. I think I'll have to check out Warp Terminal after this one. And anyone who is listening who's interested in doing that, check out Warp Terminal. But the last question I do have, which is obviously the key to everybody, is where can you send people, or where can everyone
Yeah,
go
that's
in
right.
order to check
Yeah,
out
so
Continue AI?
yeah, just Google for Continua, Continua AI. Our website's continua.ai. Using our product is the easiest thing imaginable. There's a phone number, and you just add it to a group chat, and it only sees what happens in that group chat. Doesn't see anything else. Um, we'd love any feedback. We're also hiring, so we have a couple positions open, so you can check out our careers page as well. But yeah, we're just so excited about this field of social AI and really what it means for humanity to bring in this new form of intelligence in a harmonious, synergistic way into the context of our lives to help further human to human connection.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that. And I hope that you all go to continua.ai. That's continua.ai, or Google it. Look up David Petrou on LinkedIn. Check out what he's done in the past. It's really cool stuff and what he's doing now. With that being said, thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.